Namaste and welcome. I am Gloria Grace Rand, and I am so delighted because this is my favorite type of episode that I do is I get to interview awesome people, awesome experts and authors and coaches and amazing folks. And my guest today is Amanda Johnson, who I met um, through another a friend of a friend type of deal, and we had a lovely conversation. And I thought, hey, I want you on the podcast. So let me tell you a little bit about this extraordinary woman. She is, as I said, Amanda Johnson. She's the author of Becoming Enough: A Heroine's Journey to the Already Perfect Self. I like that. And founder of Awaken Village Press, where she serves as a book doula with a mission to support authors in to reveal and express and release their story into the world in service of greater liberation for all. She is not only the author of that book, she's also a mentor. She's been a radio show host of her own program called Being Inspired Radio Show. And she just had a wealth of experience educating, facilitating, consulting, inspiring others, whether it's a 7-year-old or a CEO. I like that. And she's able to connect with them. She's had articles and all sorts of publications like Huffington Post, MindBodyGreen, and in a collaborative book, 365 Moments of Grace. And she's even got an upcoming writer's retreat in Costa Rica, as if that isn't enough to keep her busy. So welcome, Amanda.
Thank you, Gloria. I am really pleased to be here. Happy to be here.
Yeah,
Thank
well,
you.
we are glad to have you too. And I thought we'd start because I'm on an author's journey myself, and actually that is one of the ways that we have connected. But where did like the inspiration come for your book, Becoming Enough? How did that all come about?
That's a great question. And I think like any good answer, it's not simple and it's not direct and it's not a straight line.
Of course not.
Such is life, right?
Right.
Such is life. I would start by saying that about 5 years ago, I quit my corporate job. I had been a consultant, as you shared briefly. Before that, I was an actor. So I'd already had multiple careers, and I was leaving corporate with not a clue in the world where I was going next. And it was my first real foray into living with faith, trust, and really stepping into the unknown and stepping into uncertainty consciously. And through the course of that time, I worked with a coach. I started writing blogs, sharing a lot of what I was learning, experiencing, getting this very felt sense that I am a messenger. I am a teacher. I am to share this information. And over a natural progression of events, it was made known to me that I have a book within me. And with that, there were more than just one. There was a series of 3 specifically. Mm-hmm. And that was the kind of final inspiration to bring Becoming Enough into the world. And then if we look back before that, of course, the inspiration for that specific content and that specific story and that specific message of becoming enough really was born out of a lifetime. As many of us know and experience, that there's a message we are here to share and bring because of our entire life experience, bringing us to the exact moment in time when we are to share that message. And so I was able to see that over the course of my entire life, I was playing out this soul story and experience of nothing was ever enough. I was never enough. I could never work hard enough. I could never have enough. I could never be enough. And the flip side of that is I was always too much. And so, of course, noticing this and being in a very self-reflective space for those years, but even long before that, I was a seeker, an inquirer my whole life. So this book was then born of this story, of this journey that I have been on since the moment I came into the world.
Mm, that's awesome. Now, I like the subtitle of this, that it's a heroine's journey to the already perfect self. And maybe you can explain that a little bit. I mean, I sort of intuitively know what that means. And I definitely have struggled with the I'm not enough stuff. And it is, I suspect it's about really coming to terms with the fact, not only are we enough, but more, right?
Yes. One of the things I say in the book is that we cannot embrace, until we can embrace our enoughness, we cannot embrace our magnificence. So to me, enough is not the ending point, it's the starting point. So it's like in my experience, I had to learn how to be enough first. From that place, I can be more, I can have more, I can do more. But it was an essential piece. And I think it's a piece many of us overlook. We go straight to the have more, be more, strive for more before we're first okay. And the already perfect self was that remembrance. And so when I was writing the book, I was recognizing there were three main topics or themes or ideas that I wanted to include, and that I felt all were expressions of or symptoms of my not enoughness, which is perfectionism, doubt, and comparison. Very key things that many of us grapple with. And so I looked at it through my lens and through my journey, and perfectionism, that was such a beautiful chapter to write and explore, because as I started to really unpack that for myself, because the writing of the book took me on a journey. And that is why I do what I do today. So the perfectionism was, I recognized a definition of perfect is essentially it is whole and complete in this moment. And I'm paraphrasing the definition now, but to be perfect is to be whole and complete. Now, when I sit with that truth, I go, then I am perfect in every moment. So are you. So is this table. So is this day. So is this unfinished anything. Anything that is even unfinished, we could still argue is perfect, because in its moment, it is whole and complete in its unfinished nature.
Right.
And then the next day, there may be more of it, and therefore it is now still perfect. It's when we look at the acorn to the oak, the acorn is perfect in and of itself. It's not yet an oak tree. It is still perfect. The sapling that it grows into is also perfect. It is still not done growing, right? So to me, I had to come back into my perfection, my inherent perfection, and allow that to really be the place from which I then grow, expand.
I love that. That so resonates with me. And because I think of how many times I think one of the traps of perfectionism is then it leads to procrastination, because if I can't do it right, if I can't do it perfect, well, then I'm just not going to do it at all. But to know that, however, if you just do it, the best of your ability at that moment, if it gets to be whole and complete, then it's perfect. So I like that a lot. Thank you for that. See, I knew there was a reason I was going to have you on the show today. Absolutely. I needed to hear that. Now, I mentioned at the very beginning, and you've been alluding to it, that you are a book doula. Now, I've heard of the term doula before, and I believe it's more of, I guess, involved in birthing babies. And so I suspect maybe as we're writing a book, I guess we're birthing that type of baby. But explain to me a little bit more about what does that really mean, and how do you doula? How do you doula?
How do you doula? I love it. Well, to just quickly even come to that, how that came to be, as I was writing my book, it was often related to it was being compared to being pregnant, and ultimately giving birth. Now, I have not yet had that privilege as a human, and one day I might. But what I was still able to tune into that, tap into that energy, and see the parallels. And so that served me actually it served me tremendously in my own creative process. And of course, I am not the only or first to see the connection of that, and yet I got to experience that. And then as I started, I felt the call to come into doing that work again, because, well, there's not even really, there was no plan for that. It was, I wrote the book. I had an experience working with someone to support me. I realized in that moment, well, this is the way to create, is in collaboration, in co-creation with a team or a support system. And then I was guided, as I am, to doing that same work. And what that means for me is I do see the book writing process like any creative process, though I speak in terms of book writing because that's my world, as much like giving birth. And I mean, it has all of the phases. I'm working with an author now. She's about to deliver her baby and she's about to give birth this month. And she is feeling all of the things that happen because she is a mother of 3 and she was a nurse and witnessed many births and worked with many pregnant women, that there is this time at the end where there's all of this kind of, she's irritable and there's all of these little things that she doesn't want to have to deal with, but she has to because it's coming and she needs to start pushing. But then there's also all of this time before that where there's no pushing, that there is allowing, that there is full surrender, that maybe you're getting the nursery painted. So I see the parallels so powerfully in the process that it made sense when that name actually was given to me. I did not come up with it, but someone said, oh, it's like you're a book doula. And I said, wow, because what I see myself doing is ushering in that baby, ushering in that book by partnering with, supporting the mother. I work with many men as well, but I'm working with the creator of that book to conceive. Many of them have already conceived, but I might help with what do we do now with it? How can it gestate? How does it grow? What is it really wanting to become? Giving time, space to that, giving them emotional support that is boundless, to be needed. That there's this need for physical support at times, right? So I'm also doing the physical. It's like it was almost like I'm like massaging her belly or I'm massaging her back. I'm massaging the words on the page, right? I'm actually working with the text. And then we get the baby, like we get the nursery ready, we get the book designed, we get everything ready for this baby to come into the world. So I liken it to that often.
Very cool. Well, I think it's a wonderful way to describe it, and it is so needed because I know I've had a few authors on the program before, and I've had even someone who does sort of similar work as you, and it's just so important to be able to get to have that support, number one, because writing, as you know, it's a solo endeavor. It's just you sitting at either writing or at your computer. But then when it comes time to be able to get it out in the world, you definitely need to have, eyes looking at it, making sure that not only that the grammar is good and the spelling is good, but that the whole thing makes sense and it's going to make sense for the reader. So that's wonderful that you've found that calling in the process of writing your own book. So I love that. I want to get back a little bit to the concept that you wrote about, becoming enough. What advice do you have, and you probably have this in the book, to someone who feels like they're not enough? How can they, other than, talking about thinking that, realizing that they are actually perfect, but speaking as one who knows it takes a little bit more than just that. You've got to do some more work.
I would say, and this is where the book is, again, born from this, the concept of non-judgmental observance or observation. That was a very pivotal point for me to help shift me out of not feeling enough. Not feeling enough is a judgment. Feeling enough is a judgment, I could say. Right. But what the idea is, I needed to first break myself of the habit, of the pattern of seeing everything as black or white, right or wrong, good or bad. Because if it is good, then it's not bad. But if it's bad, then it's not good. And there's this constant comparison.
Right.
There was never a place for me to land in the center of that. So for me, enoughness is that center point. It is enough. That's the way I'm saying it. Others say it is what it is. So Ram Dass would say, so it's this center point that it is neither good nor bad. Or another way of saying it's both good and bad. We could either way you want to say it. So in this moment, and that was a practice. So my invitation to anyone would be looking first at being aware of, when am I in judgment? And it starts with awareness. When am I saying, oh, I did that wrong? Or, oh my God, that could have been better. Or, oh, I wish I hadn't said that. Judgment, judgment, judgment. So in those moments, and this doesn't just have to do with ourselves, sometimes it's actually easier to start by seeing where we're doing it externally. Because of course, what we do externally is a mirror of what we were doing internally. Right. So if I look and go, God, it's so cold in here, I immediately made a judgment of what is.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, I'm feeling cold.
Right.
Either I can sit with the discomfort of feeling cold, or I can go put on a sweater. Neither is right or wrong.
Right.
It's not something to, it's not, so if I can then take that non-judgmental observer and apply it to me and say, I just said something I wish I hadn't said. Okay. So that's what it is. Or I wish I had said something else. Okay. Well, can I be in the discomfort of just noticing that, being aware of that? I don't need to go into further judgment or further criticism. So of course it's a practice. It did not happen overnight, but it's becoming aware. And that would be my invitation. First thing is become aware of the judgment. And then very quickly, compassion needs to follow. Otherwise, we're going to suffer even more. But I would say, be in that non-judgmental place of awareness.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And maybe we'll put your other hat on and then ask you to share some advice for maybe some would-be authors out there. 'Cause there's a lot that goes into trying to write a book, and maybe and they might even be struggling with feeling like, who am I to write this book type of thing. So what advice would you have for some first-time authors especially?
Beautiful. One thing that wants to be shared based on something you said just before is this, writing is a solitary act, it's a solo act. Yes and no is my opinion. Yes and no. Yes, it is, because only you, only me, only the person out there who has that book or message to write can be the channel for that. And it doesn't need to be done in isolation. I do think there's somewhat of a belief. It's a little bit like we have to work hard. When I wrote my book, it actually felt easeful and effortless. And I'm not saying that because anyone out there is like, well, it's not easy and effortless for me. That's okay. All I'm inviting is the possibility that it can be. The possibility that it can be. And that's not to say there aren't challenges, obstacles, and whatever. Those are all beautiful and necessary parts of the process. But what I'm inviting anyone into is to recognize that there can be this flow about it. And there is support out there. It doesn't have to be hard. And whether that's, working with someone like me, getting a group of people, going on retreat, just knowing that you aren't alone in it, I think is important, because we can often separate ourselves in anything that we do. That's one piece. And then the other piece that wants to come through is that it was there and now it's going. Let me just see if it's still there. There was one more, but I'll see if it comes back. But yeah, the not doing it alone. I think that's the who am I? I did want to speak to that. The who am I? I feel it's really important for all of us to know that each of our stories matter. And if we have the call on our heart, if we feel it's placed on our heart to share it, then there's a reason for that. And I would invite everyone to check in and say, yes, that is a desire of mine. I think often it's easy. I know I did this. I said to someone, I said, well, doesn't everyone want to write a book? And my friend said, no. So there's this, if I wanted to really quickly shove that aside and say, oh, that's that's just my ego. Oh, that's just a desire. No, when I can remember that my desire is divine desire, then I can permit that story to come through me. So any doubt, questioning, it's so natural. It is so normal. It is so a part of the process. And I invite any of you to face that fear and just say, I'm not going to move away from that fear. I'm actually going to move through that fear, because that's the only way the fear will dissipate. So if that who am I comes up, that's when I invite you to step into it and say, well, great, my story matters. And then one last thing that wants to be shared is in terms of doing it alone, not doing it alone, but then I just spoke with this beautiful author, and she said to me, she goes, because she's written her draft, but she's still working with it and, you know, ready to do more with it. And I was speaking with her and she goes, wow, clarity is found in engaging with others, not sitting and being in my head about it. Right. And it was amazing when she said that. So even the writing process, yes, you are doing it. And it is amazing what can happen when you're in conversation with someone, or you get responses or reactions, or you're in a collective and there's something energetically that happens. So I would also offer that.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I know that when we can connect with other people, just even just talking about maybe an idea, that it could spark something else, and that's when you better have your notebook handy so you can jot something down, because it's amazing. Because as you say, it's not a linear endeavor. It's going to flow and going to go around and around. And then I would just add is that if you are ever feeling stuck, is to just, spend some time in prayer and meditation and ask for guidance, because as you say, that idea came from somewhere. And I believe that it came from our source, our, God, the universe, however you call it. And so if God put that idea into your heart and your head for a reason, God wants to see you through and will help you through.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's beautifully said.
Thank you. So if someone wants to talk with you and maybe get some help with the author journey and have you be their doula, what would be the best way for someone to get a hold of you?
Beautiful. Well, you can go to my website and or email me directly. My website is amandajohnson.tv, as in television, and my email, amanda@amandajohnson.tv. And you can go on there. It's a landing, it's a place. I don't spend a lot of time in my website, so you're welcome to go there and then find me. And I would love to have a face-to-face or a connection with you. And of course, anyone who's, depending on when you're seeing this or when this is out, there could still be an opportunity for you to join me in person in Costa Rica. And I can tell you hands down, it will absolutely not only transform your book, it will transform you. And that is actually my priority, is that what we want to bring into the world, because it is a divine desire, inspiration coming from source. It is our responsibility then to be open for that to flow through us as clearly, as purely, as vulnerably, authentically as we can. And that is what this space that I'm creating with others is intended to do in Costa Rica. More information is also on my website.
Awesome. Yeah, I think any of you listening out there, yes, if you go check it out, and I'm sure just because it's happening now, if you happen to miss it, I suspect there will probably be another one down the road. So I'm sure you'll stay in touch with Amanda to find out more about that. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day and speaking with us today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, and for those of you who are listening, if you want to be able to hear more awesome interviews like this, if I do say so myself, and it's not necessarily for me, it's for the guests. The guests are awesome. I encourage you to subscribe to Live, Love, Engage on the podcast platform of your choice, whether that's iTunes or Spotify. I'm pretty much on all of them. And if you can leave us a review and a rating, especially on iTunes, I would be ever so grateful for that as well, because that helps more people to find us. And I think that's going to do it. So until next time, I want to encourage you all to live fully and love deeply and engage authentically.